Good morning. So I'm going to make a video this morning about Satanism in Washington D.C. and how Washington D.C. is run by a satanic cult. And the reason why I wanted to make a video about Amen, the god Amen of Egypt, and how the Israelites came out of Egypt with this new god, and how it's really very similar to Amen. But I can't make that video now. So instead, I'm going to make a video about Satanism and how the Washington D.C. structure is rooted in Satanism. And you see that in its entertainment groups. So the entertainment media that's coming or that's connected to Washington, D.C. is promoting Satanism. And this is not by accident. It's not by a coincidence. It's not just because they have free speech and that they can say what they want and this is what they choose to say. No, they're actually being given grants. So they actually are given money by Washington, D.C. to promote Satanism. So this is a satanic cult, and this is how the government works. It's not a secret. It's not a conspiracy. It's actually just this is how it runs. But people tell themselves that it's not happening, and so they don't see it. For instance, the National Endowment of the Arts will give you money if you promote their political agenda. That's from Washington, D.C. And their political agenda is on their website, so you know what their agenda is. So when you see what's happening, for instance, recently with the big awards show, which I didn't watch, but it was promoting Satanism, and it was a satanic ritual that was being done, and it's all about being trans and being sexually perverse and being locked in a cage, and it's all about kind of what the whole thing there. If you understand Satanism. Is on the surface it's like we're just having fun and we're sexually free, but if you actually look at it, you got to understand that sexuality, for instance, is how the race perpetuates itself, and so it's really attack on sex, right? It's attacking the sexual, it's attacking procreation. So that's why Washington D.C. Uses Satanism as its cultural. That's the culture that it's promoting, because Satanism specifically attacks the sexual reproduction of the society, and the people in Washington D.C. want to limit the population growth. They want to prevent people from reproducing. They're trying to limit global populations. This is also not a secret. It's not a conspiracy. It's just this is what they're interested in. They're interested in reducing the population to a manageable amount of people that they can manage easily, and so Satanism is a key cultural thing to propagate. So when you're watching an award show like that and you're like, why are they promoting Satanism? People will tell themselves, well, this is just Hollywood, or this is just the Hollywood of New York, and this is just what they're into, and they think it's funny, and they just like upsetting Christians and this and that. Well, they do like all that, and that's true, but it's actually more than that. It's actually it's designed this way. Like our society, because of the people that control the culture, the society must be based on Satanism. So it's not just a choice, oh, well, we just like this and we're running the awards so we get to do what we want. No, it's literally like this is the culture you must forward, right? You have to forward this type of culture. This is the culture that you get the grants for. This is the culture where you get the license for. This is the culture that you get all the benefits from the government for promoting. And so you have to understand, that's why when you look at what happened with the awards show, when you look at people like Marina Abramovic, when you look at people like James Alefantis, there was an article in GQ magazine that listed him as one of the top 50 most powerful people. And you look and you go, what? How is he in Washington, D.C., right? He's listed next to CIA directors and senators and presidents and presidential candidates and, the Secretary of State, and then you have James Alefantis, who runs a pizza parlor. And you're like, why would he be one of the top 50 most powerful people in Washington? Because he's part of this grant-making group in Washington, D.C. that distributes the grants to the entertainment industry, right? And so this is where you get into all of the sexual deviancy. Their idea is anything that will prevent people from falling in love and getting married and having a family. They want to promote the opposite of that because the objective is to limit the population. So the way they limit the population is through promoting a certain type of culture, Satanism, promoting certain type of behaviors, promoting drug use, promoting promiscuity, promoting sexual deviancy. And this is where all of that's coming from. It's actually coming from Washington, D.C. It's coming from Washington, D.C. because there's a cult in Washington, D.C. And this same cult, now, because Washington, D.C. controls all the capitals around the United States, it's the same everywhere. That's why the media all promotes the same thing. This is additionally why the churches now in America promote Satanism. If you look at the agenda of the Satanists, and you look at the agenda of the Christian churches, it's the exact same political agenda. In other words, they support all the same political groups. There's no variation. In the Christian churches, in the Jewish organizations, in the Satanic organizations, the Muslim groups, they're all supported by the same DC government through grants, right? That's the other thing you have to understand is that the Washington DC government gives grants to churches, synagogues, Hollywood, Muslims. They're giving all this money to these people to push a certain agenda. And so that's why that's why there's no variation in the media. There's no variation in the churches, and they're all pushing the same thing. Now there's some political disputes happening over what exactly. Well, we're not going to get into that. But if you notice, overall, once you get the higher up you get into the political disputes, you find out that they're really surface disputes, and that there's not a lot of there's tricks how they do this. Okay. I'll give you an example. So let's take war as an example. So one side's supposed to be for the war but not sending the weapons, and the other side says they're for the war even more, and you got to send more weapons. So the idea is if you don't like the one side, then you want the other side that wants to do even more war, but your side's still doing the war. And then the other side's supposed to be there to get you to do more war. You see what I mean? That's an example. That's an example. That's like the Democrats are like, well, we're for the war and we're sending this weapon, but we're not sending that weapon. And then the other side, the Republicans go, you have to send all the weapons. And then you're like, rah, we got to send more weapons. They're just not sending enough weapons, you see? And it's a way to trick you into just like whatever side you're on, you both support the war, right? So that's one of their little games that they play. But ultimately, the cult is satanic. Now, you got to understand that Washington, D.C. Is on land that was founded, or land that was donated, or land that was owned by the Vatican. So, when you look at what happened with the Washington, D.C. Revolution in 1775, it's what I call the Jesuit Wars. So, the Jesuit Wars were from 1775. Well, actually, it started before that because, well, let me put it this way. The Jesuit Wars really started in 1759 when I believe it was Spain or Portugal, one of those countries, wanted to get rid of the Jesuits. And then this idea that the Catholic kings were in a mutiny against the Pope over the Jesuits, who had the Jesuits had a global structure that they were using, which was bypassing the kings and getting in the way of the kings and causing problems for the kings of Europe. And so this caused a conflict between the kings of Europe and the Vatican, and so they decided that they were going to have a mutiny against the Pope and say, no, you got to do something about these Jesuits. And the Catholic kings started to exile them from their territories. And this spread all across Europe. Many European kings went along with this mutiny against the Pope over the Jesuits. And this started in 1759, and by 1775, I think it was around 1773, between 73 and 75, the Pope finally said, fine. There was so much pressure on the Pope to get rid of the Jesuit order that he said, fine, we're getting rid of the Jesuit order, and he finally did so. So what happened was he issued a statement that said the Jesuit order has been dissolved, and then in 1775 there was a revolt in the American colonies. It was a Freemason revolt, and the result of that Freemason revolt was the reestablishment of the Jesuit order in the colonies, because under the King of England, the British Church of England, the Jesuits had been prohibited from operating in the colonies. Now, the King of England and the Church of England was Protestant, So it was the Protestants were against the Jesuits, and the Catholics were also against the Jesuits. So the Catholic kings, not the Pope. The Pope was always for them. So he was forced to dissolve the thing. And then in 1775, there was a revolution in America, a Freemason revolt. Now, you could say, well, there's a lot of reasons for the revolt, but if you look at the outcome of the revolt and who won that revolution, it was the Jesuits. Because the Jesuits reestablished their operations in Maryland on land which you call today Washington, D.C. So the original capital was in Philadelphia. They moved it to Washington, D.C. on land that was donated by Bishop Carroll of the papacy, of the Catholic Church, of the Vatican. And then they moved the headquarters, or the capital of Washington, the capital of the new colonies was moved from Philadelphia to this land on Maryland, right across from Georgetown University. Georgetown University is where the CIA recruits all of its, not all of it, but is where the CIA recruits at Georgetown University. So Georgetown University, Pentagon, Congress, Senate, President, it's all right there. So they moved everything right there to where Georgetown University is. And so that was 1775 to 1776. The revolution ends in 76, and then they moved the capital down to Maryland, and they established the and that was in I think it was around 1790. So then it was that, and then what happened? So these Jesuit wars spread from America. Then they took out France with the French Revolution, the Reign of Terror, and who got his head cut off? The King of France. And the King of France lost his head, and the monarchy was abolished. So one after another, you saw all these monarchies start to fall across Europe. And this goes on for a long time. I think it was almost 50 years or something, through the Napoleonic Wars. So there's all this turmoil going on. And at the end of all this, the Rothschilds, who came out of this system of the Vatican, captured the Bank of England. And all the kings of Europe have been disbanded, and the Jesuit order at I think it was 1814, 1815, around the time that the Napoleonic Wars are ending, the Jesuit order is reestablished. And the Jesuit order has been here since then. And they've got schools all over North America and all over South America and all over Canada and all over Europe. And so they have this worldwide network that they operate out of. And so when you think, does America have a state religion? The state religion of America is Satanism. And the reason why it's Satanism is because the Vatican pushes different ideologies. And I would say that they're not, that the Pope is a secular humanist. And the Jesuits see secular humanism as the same as Christianity without Christ. And so it's almost like it's a religion. It's a secular religion. It's secularized Christianity the way they think it is. And so this is their agenda. And so they don't need, they make up all these different groups, and Black Lives Matter, the LGBT thing, the trans people thing, the progressivism, and they have their fingers in conservatism. You've got people like Sean Hannity. He's part of their network, and that's why whether you're watching the left-wing media or the right-wing media, they hide a lot of the criminality and what's going on. They distract you with things that upset you, but they're not going to tell you that Satanism that you're seeing on television it's not just some left-wing loony people doing it. It's grants from DC. Is what I'm trying to say. Because I have a lot to say, and it's hard to fit it all in a small video like this. So I'm trying to throw out a lot of information out there, which you can look up yourself. But you have to understand this. So, for instance, Sean Hannity doesn't go on a show and say, well, I just found out that all this grant money is going to sponsor Satanism, and that's where it's going. And it's going to sponsor Satanism, and that's why your kids are being indoctrinated in Satanism. And they want the drugs to come in. Like, Sean Hannity's not going to go on his show and say, the government actually wants the fentanyl to come in, and they want you to be depressed. They want you to kill yourself, and they want you to engage in sexual misbehavior. And you see, he's not going to say that. He's going to say that, I don't know what he's going to say. He's going to listen to a show, and you'll see what he says, and it's mostly BS. Because he's part of a network, because they control the conservatives and they control the liberals, and it's all under this controlled system, and that's how they keep things going. So now, as far as the Satanism aspect, though, the Satanism is so there's grants that the Washington D.C. government gives out. Now, if I wanted one of those grants for what I believe in, I wouldn't qualify. You have to meet certain qualifications to get the grant. And the qualification is you have to say what they want you to say. You have to promote what they want you to promote. Because it's a cult. It's a literal satanic cult. Think Marina Abramovic. Okay, she gets grants from these people. She gets grants. James Alefantis is part of this group in Washington, D.C. that gives out these grants or receives the grants and distributes the grants by the government for the arts and entertainment. And people tell themselves, well, it's just up-and-coming artists that need money. No. They set up corporations of their cult, and then their cult gets the money to promote the ideas. And they're promoted in Hollywood, and New York, and San Francisco, and in Europe, and in Germany, and all over the world. They make sure they have their people promoting the certain type of art and culture that they want you to have. So it's not an organic culture. It's all forced on you, and it's forced on you by Washington, D.C. money and European Union money if you're in Europe, which is connected to Washington, D.C. And it's basically it's the culture that the people that founded the World Bank and basically it's this. It's the Swiss bankers, the Davos group. It's the Vatican and their whole network. Ultimately, it goes back to the Vatican and the bankers. Vatican and the bankers. That's really the core of the group. Vatican and bankers, because all the governments in the world are under that. They're under the Davos group, World Economic Forum, right? They need money. Every government wants money. They need money. What do we have to do to get the money, right? And that money is connected to the World Economic Forum, and those people are connected to the Vatican. And the Vatican has a network, a worldwide network of the Jesuits and different intelligence services. And this is all religion. You got to understand. But it's not religion the way you think of it. The Bible, that's why, I believe that Amen is the God that the Israelites, I believe that it's essentially the same as Amen. And I'm not saying literally Amen, but what was described by the Egyptians as Amen. Amen means hidden. He's the hidden God, right? He's the God. This is dualism, spirit versus physical. So this is the idea that came out of Egypt, was there's spirit and there's physical. This was different than what the Greeks believed. This is different than what the Canaanites believed. This is different than what the Sumerians and the Akkadians believed with their Enuma Elish. It was different because it said there's a creator. And this is where the Israelites got it. So when you trace through the Israelites through their religion, it goes back to Egypt. And it goes back to Amen. And that's why we say Amen at the end of our prayers. In Christianity and in the religion of Israel, they say Amen. Christianity is a part of the religion of Israel. So the religions of Israel, the different factions that came out of Israel, they all say Amen. And they don't know that it's Amen anymore. Just that's how they end their prayers. But that's how I'll end this video. Is that the God of the Bible can destroy this network. Because if you're not a Satanist and you're not a deviant and you don't want to kill yourself and you don't want to destroy your society and you want to have a happy love life and have a family, then don't support Washington, D.C. or any of the people associated with it, and instead reject it. Reject secular government. That's how I'll end this video. Reject secular government and demand a religion or a government based on the Bible. Based on Genesis, specifically Genesis. Because Genesis will lead you back to Egypt, and that will lead you back to a good description, which I believe is the truth, which is the Creator God. That's who the Israelites were following. That's why Amen means hidden. Now he was the god of Thebes because Amos was the ruler at the time, so that's why Amen was put in that position. But that position on the Egyptian pantheon is always the creator god, whether it's called Amen or Atum or Ta or Yepta or however you pronounce it. And, you know, I'm not going to say more about that in this video, but I'm just saying, the Bible, if you say we're done with secular government, it doesn't work, it's disgusting, it's destroying civilization, we're going to go back to government based on Genesis. You will destroy the satanic system. They can't operate under that system, and you can put back together a real civilization that's worth living in, and that's wonderful, and has wonderful people that you enjoy, and it'll be a better society than what we're being offered and forced on us by Washington, D.C.